Oh hey, what's happening there YouTube? It's Brian House here for Housework, and today I am not in my workshop. I am out in an urban sort of forest just off the Livingston Highway behind me. I actually took some time recently to just kind of come out and walk the dog this morning, and I started thinking about everything that's going on with the situation we're in with the quarantines and the lockdowns. I got a nice phone call yesterday from someone who is in Honolulu. Phil, thank you so much for the call. If you don't know, I will include my cell phone number. You guys can call me or text me anytime. I may not always answer it. I usually answer a text, but I have been releasing that out to you guys in the hopes that if someone does need to talk, they can. And Phil and I just BS'd for probably 45 minutes yesterday. He was telling me all about the stuff going on in Honolulu. And, you know, I started thinking about it, and I started thinking about the situation in Honolulu seems a lot more intense than it is here in Florida so far. I think Florida is just behind the curve slightly. So we are probably headed for that impending lockdown and quarantine situation, in which case I will not be able to film in my studio. My studio is not actually attached to my house or on my property or anything. It's in my business, my place of business. So I'll have to shut that down as well, most likely. So I started thinking about some of the things that I can do while I'm at home and what I can work on while I'm at home. It seems limiting at first, but then I started getting creative, and if I plan ahead now, I think I can actually achieve some pretty cool stuff in my house. And one of those things was getting outside, getting in nature, and doing a little urban foraging right here in my neighborhood, which is, you know, pretty urban. You know, I live in a pretty decent sized city in Florida. It's kind of common, but what's kind of cool is behind our property is this space, which is like I think they're required to keep this. Like Florida has a requirement that you can build in one area. Livingston tends to be a bit of a racetrack. Anyway, because it's like a 6-lane highway that's really not a highway. It's more of like a street, but people treat it like a street. And then this stretch right here is really clear of stoplights and such, so people just go crazy. Anyway, so this space back here is like a wetland space, and it's untouched. It's called preserve space, I think. And they don't allow anybody to build on these properties unless you have special permits, and you know, you create water management and all that. Anyhow, long story short is it's beautiful back here. It's filled with, like, the minute you step off of the street and then come down in here, it's you know, it's untouched. It's really nice. And what I was noticing yesterday when I was walking the dog was all of the cypress. There's cypress on the ground, and it's just dry and dead. And I was wondering, could we potentially pick a piece and then cut it up and bring it back to the studio, kiln dry it, and then stabilize it and use it as a handle for something? And I went kind of down a rabbit hole the other day learning about stabilizing wood. I have a vacuum chamber, but I've never used it. I thought, well, this should be pretty simple. It is and it isn't. I think the first time you do it, it's intimidating. So I didn't have enough cactus juice. Cactus juice is this heat-activated resin that you put in a vacuum chamber, and it sort of creates a bond between the resin and the wood, and it eliminates all the voids inside the wood. Long story short is, I'm going to do that. I just don't have all the stuff I need yet. And of course, I've ordered some stuff, but it hasn't come in yet. And I'm thinking focusing more on the handles, the woods, the smaller things that I can do at home makes a ton of sense. And then also finding interesting things to stabilize and experiment with stabilization, maybe some dyeing, also leather work, things that I can bring home and do with my hands that does not require a lot of heavy machinery and grinders and so on and so on. So that's what we're doing today out here in the woods. We are gonna dig up some cypress. I've seen a couple pieces as I was walking, and I brought my Sawzall out with me, and I'm just gonna cut it up, bring it back to the studio and the workshop, and see if we can process it into something usable. So anyway, let's get started. So for those of you who do not know what cypress is, or maybe you're not really fully familiar with the cypress tree, this is a real typical example of one. They've got a real big bulbous base on them. They're a slow growing coniferous tree, and they're native to the southeast United States. It is a tree that is protected here. You cannot chop them down. If you do find one on the ground, or a piece of one on the ground, I looked it up, it is legal to take pieces from preserve areas, as long as it's not a national park or preserve land that's zoned for park space. Now, these trees will grow in pretty much any environment down here, including in the water. You'll see pictures of them inside of swampy lands, submerged. And there's if you've ever heard the term cypress knee, it's the piece of wood that's kind of coming up near the base. This particular tree doesn't have one. I'll find one around here so you can see one, but it looks like another little numpy, like a nubby knee coming out of the ground. And some people mistake that for a dead tree, but it's actually not. It's part of the root system, and they're growing up to actually get more air so they can breathe. It's a super interesting piece of life out here in the swamplands, and I'm interested to find out if it's good handle material. Have you guys ever used cypress wood for handle material? Leave a comment down below and let me know. Here's a great example of a cypress knee. Sometimes they're actually not this close to the tree itself, but this is a beautiful little knee here, and I find these super interesting because sometimes you'll find them, 4, 5, 6 feet away from the actual tree. But yeah, don't cut these down, don't touch these. These are part of this, of this tree itself. So really cool stuff. Here's another classic thing you'll see down here. This is an alive cypress tree, believe it or not. And you'll see them all hollowed out like this. Now, I'm not 100% sure as to how or why this occurs. I think some of them get hit by lightning and it hollows out the center portion of the tree. But because the tree is so hardy, it just kind of grows around itself. And grows like this and will continue to grow like this for hundreds of years. Bees love this stuff right here. This is a common bee house you'll find down here. We've got the European bee here, and we've also got the Africanized bee, because we're similar to the African temperate climate. So we do get both, but yes, a lot of times you'll see bees flying in and out of these. I love that. I think it's fantastic. But can you believe it? This tree is alive. Beautiful. Now, I don't think this is cypress. I think this is oak. Man, it feels really tough. Beautiful. I don't think it's quite right. It's pretty too. Not sure if that's right either. Now here's a piece that might just be perfect. This one's sitting up, not on the ground. You might be able to take a nice chunk out of this and use this. Feels really moist. Let's cut into it and see what we got. Oh, wow. Beautiful. It's really nice. Say take a decent chunk out of this and see what we can do with it. Beautiful. Wood's in really good shape, it looks like. All right, so looks like we got what we came for, and I feel good about these pieces. Hopefully they'll stabilize and work out. Let's take them back to the studio and process them and get them kiln dried. So this is turning out pretty good. I've never processed log before on a table saw. Maybe I did years ago or something, but I'm sure there's a safer and better way to do it than what I was doing. But the sled feels pretty safe, you know, when you're running it through, it feels very easy. My fingers weren't anywhere near that blade and so on. And the cuts aren't perfect. You know, I've got some lines here that, you know, will eventually be taken out anyway. But what I really love about this process is, you know, this was a tree that was sitting in the swamp about 2 hours ago. And I love that it's a mystery. You know, there's not, I've never worked with cypress before, and obviously every tree is different. So it's kind of cool to cut into it and see all the different striations and splits, and it looks like the younger part of the tree here is a little bit tighter. The inside of it is a little bit tighter, and it went through like a growth spurt there on the outside. So you can kind of look at that and see, you know, exactly where you want to use it. And then also there's like a ring, like a dark ring in here. It's just very cool to me that this is now in my workshop, and we're going to turn it into a knife scale. Or possibly, in fact, I was actually thinking about using this on one of the hog splitters, which I think would be kind of cool. But yeah, I haven't worked with wood in a while, so it's really nice to get back into woodworking. I don't have a ton of woodworking tools. My table saw is a recent addition to this space, but yeah, really fun project so far. So anyhow, I'm gonna go ahead and cut these down, try to avoid this crack here. I'm gonna cut it down into slices, and then we'll get it into the kiln and dry it out.
Okay, so now we've got them all cut up and processed on the table saw, and that process actually was a lot easier than I thought it would be. I was actually thinking that I would have to drill the log to a piece of wood and run it through and everything, and there was some waste associated with this process, but the beautiful part is, for me anyhow, is the center pieces of the wood. And you can see the nice dark center pieces with some really nice knots inside of them, and I managed to pretty much salvage all of that. And I left one piece just as a block. I thought eventually when I get my lathe up and running, I can turn this maybe, or possibly use a draw knife and turn it into an axe handle or small hammer handle. That would be kind of cool. And I just am so pleased with the beauty of this wood. I mean, as my first time out, going out and foraging for lumber out in the middle of a swamp, it just, there's just something about that process that really touches me deeply in my soul. And the fact that it actually turned out, because you just really never know. You go out there and find a piece of wood and it could be a piece of junk, right? You know, that's not worth much at all or any time. So it's kind of a little bit of a risk there. But in this case, it was actually turned out so that it turned out really nice. So what we've done so far, processed it all. I do have a moisture meter. I want to check it because I was thinking it does feel kind of moist, but it doesn't. I mean, it also feels very dry. So I want to check it for the moisture. That's 6%. 6.7%. 5.8. Wow, this is really dry. Yeah, wow, holy cow. I don't even know if I'm going to need to, that's 5%. 7.3%. Yeah, I'm not sure if we'll even really need to kiln dry these. They seem like they're actually really dry already. I don't want to throw them in the kiln and have them crack. So I think what I'm going to do is leave them out for a day or two before I do anything with them, let them acclimate to the dry air inside of this air-conditioned space, and then we can talk about stabilizing them. Now, I have been doing a lot of research on stabilizing. I have the cactus juice, I have a chamber, but my pieces are a little bit too long because I want to use them for the hog splitter project that I'm working on. And in fact, I found a couple pieces that would just fit perfectly. They have some nice curvature wood grain in them that almost looks like it was really meant to be used for this hog splitter. So I'm excited about that. But these are just simply too long, so I'm not able to use them in the pot that I have. My vacuum chamber pot won't accommodate these. So I'm researching into maybe buying a nice tall container that I can use as a vacuum chamber, or I can slide these in and actually use that instead of the pot. So that's the next step. If you got something out of today's video, make sure you hit that thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you click that little bell, you'll get a notification every time I upload something to YouTube. Down in the description, there are links to my Amazon store, my Teespring store, my Patreon page, Buy Me a Coffee, and those are all ways to support my channel. And if you do that, then it helps me continue building, making, and creating right here in my workshop. As always, guys, I truly appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. I hope you're all happy and healthy out there, and I hope everything is okay with your lives. And if you need someone to talk to, you can call my cell phone. The number's down below. That is available to anyone. You can call it or text it. I don't always answer it, but I usually will always respond to a text. Thanks again, guys, for watching. My name is Brian House, and this has been Housework.